It was supposed to be just another morning, the kind where the elevator dings echo too loud in empty lobbies, and the air smells like polished glass and quiet ambition. Keanu Reeves hadn't planned to be in that building. He wasn't there for a premiere or a press event. No red carpet. Just a text from a friend the night before, scribbled between meetings. "Drop by if you can. I'm on 41. He walked in without being noticed. No one questioned the man in the dark coat, the quiet eyes. He preferred it that way. At 8:32 a.m. he stepped into One Monarch Plaza, the tallest, most secure building downtown. By 8:57, he was seated across from Marcus, sipping tea in a small server room that buzzed like a quiet city of light. They joked about bad movie scripts and aging knees, about how people changed but coffee never did. And then, at 9:17, the world shifted. 3 sharp cracks shattered the morning calm. Gunfire, glass, screaming. Then silence. Not absence, but pressure. The kind that hums in your bones before panic takes over. The building locked down. A voice came through the speaker system, thin and trembling. This is security. Floor 42 has been taken. Armed suspects, hostages. We've lost control." Time froze. His breath didn't quicken, his hands didn't shake. He simply looked up, as if calculating something only he could see. "What's directly above us?" he asked. 42, Marcus whispered. "The boardroom. High-profile meeting this morning. Very secure." There was a pause. He set down his cup. "And what's between here and there?" Marcus pointed toward a forgotten hatch in the wall, half covered by coiled wires and dust. A maintenance vent, barely wide enough for an adult. Without a word, Keanu pulled it open, his coat brushing the metal edge. Then he climbed in, one elbow at a time, vanishing into the dark. Inside the shaft it was narrow and stale, metal groaned under shifting weight. Dust clung to his palms. His boots moved slowly, deliberately, avoiding every creak. One mistake, one loud slip, and he could alert whoever was down there. At 9:23 he reached a small grate, light spilling through from the boardroom below. He looked down. 3 men with rifles, one by the window, another pacing, the third on the phone, clearly in charge. There were more than 20 hostages. Suits, name tags, expensive watches now useless in fear. Among them, a woman clutched a little girl, no older than 9. The girl had a stuffed bear clutched to her chest, its blue ear torn. She wasn't crying, she was watching the ceiling. And then, she saw him. He reached into his coat, pulled out a phone, switched to the front camera. No signal, no call. But he held the screen to the vent, showing her his face, calm, quiet, and a single gesture, finger to lips. She blinked, but didn't make a sound. Instead, she turned her head slightly and pointed, just a tiny movement, toward the man by the window. That was all he needed. He backed up silently, the edges of the duct cold against his back. The girl had given him something no one else had. A direction. A chance. Down below, a voice barked. 1 hour, then someone dies. Above them, Keanu Reeves began crawling toward a war zone. Alone, without a weapon, without armor, only driven by instinct, memory, and the silent promise exchanged through a pane of dusted metal between one man and one frightened child. The duct narrowed as he moved. Sharp turns, rusted joints, every motion calculated, weight distributed low and silent. He wasn't thinking of headlines, he wasn't thinking of consequences, only of the girl with the torn bear and the man near the window she feared enough to point at without speaking. He emerged behind a service panel tucked into a blind corner of the hallway on the 42nd floor. No cameras here, just forgotten wires and dim emergency lights casting long shadows on cold marble. A janitor's closet stood open nearby. Inside, a tool belt, a heavy-duty flashlight, a coil of cable, and a fire extinguisher. It wasn't much, but it would do. He pressed himself flat to the wall just outside the boardroom's back entrance, a secondary door used only by staff. From inside, muffled voices argued. Demands echoed in the air like cracks in glass. He knelt, fitted the flashlight behind his back like a baton, wound the cable around one arm, his breath slowed. Muscles relaxed, then coiled. A man shouted, another cursed, then something unexpected. A single shot. Not at a person, at the ceiling. A warning. 5 minutes, the voice screamed. Then the kid dies. Time no longer passed in seconds but in heartbeats. He needed a breach point, fast. That's when he saw it. A narrow floor-to-ceiling panel of glass behind the room, barely visible beneath thick vertical blinds. It wasn't designed for entry, but behind it, just on the other side, was the man by the window. He climbed out the window from the emergency exit and edged across a 3-foot ledge, 42 stories above traffic. The wind screamed. Below, the city went on, unaware of the war taking shape above them. He reached the glass, took the cable, wrapped it tight around his hand, took a breath, then, fast and brutal, swung. Glass exploded inward. He was through before the second shard hit the floor. The man by the window turned too late. Keanu didn't yell, didn't warn. He moved. One step, grabbed the man's arm, spun, elbow to throat, wrist twist, gun dropped. He yanked the man down, pinned him, locked him into the floor with his full weight. The whole thing lasted 6 seconds. Another shout from the far end of the room, the leader, raising his gun. Keanu looked up, eyes meeting the girl's. She shook her head. Not him. There was another. He grabbed the downed man's earpiece, slipped it in. Static, then a voice. Echo to lead, are we clear? Keanu pressed the button, lowered his voice. Lead down. Continue protocol. He moved fast, slinking low behind overturned chairs, around sobbing hostages. He could see the leader now, pacing, angry, sweating, losing grip. Then he saw the third man, hidden behind a pillar, watching everything. Calm, focused. This was the real one, the one the girl meant. The one who didn't shout or posture, just watched, waited, and planned. Keanu froze. This wasn't a robbery. This was precision. And he had just walked into the center of something bigger than any ransom demand. Fade to faint heartbeat sound, distant wind outside. A single piano note plays low. He didn't move, not yet. The man by the pillar was unlike the others, silent, detached but sharp, a black cap pulled low. No gun in hand, but there was something colder in his posture, calmness without empathy, the way predators watched their prey before the wind shifted. Keanu dropped lower behind a table, every nerve listening. In the earpiece, silence. The false voice he had sent was no longer being answered. They knew something was wrong. The countdown had stopped, but the danger hadn't. He scanned the room. The hostages were motionless but not unaware. The girl and her mother were now against the far wall, curled behind 2 older women who looked like they hadn't blinked in minutes. A man in a suit, sweat staining his armpits, had tears streaking his face, but no one made a sound. Then it happened. The man by the pillar twitched, not like a nervous tick, but a signal. From behind the projector screen, a 4th man emerged. No mask, no hesitation, holding a small, square detonator in one hand and a dead expression in the other. The plan was never about ransom. This was an execution, a message. And Keanu, now fully exposed near the broken glass behind him, had seconds to make a choice. He stepped forward, not charging, measured, deliberate, voice low and calm. You don't want to do this. The man with the detonator didn't blink. I know who you are, Keanu said, hands raised slightly. And I know you're not ready for what happens next. Still nothing. 32 people in this room. You press that button and you won't see what you wanted them to see. No broadcast, no revolution, just blood and silence. Then, finally, a movement. A slow glance toward the girl in the corner, her wide eyes, her mother's hand clutching her. Keanu stepped closer. You think you've planned for everything, but you didn't plan for me. The man blinked, and in that fraction of distraction, Keanu threw the cable coil like a lasso. It wrapped around the man's wrist, yanking the detonator out of reach. He dove forward, tackling him down hard, But the fourth man lunged from the pillar, pulling a concealed blade. Keanu rolled, barely dodging a downward stab, grabbing the fire extinguisher, slamming it into the attacker's thigh, then shoulder, then temple. The impact echoed like a gong. Silence fell again. Hostages still, eyes wide, 2 men unconscious, 1 man pinned. The detonator shattered against the marble. No explosion. Just breath. Heavy, fast, alive. And then, the soft, unmistakable click of handcuffs. He turned. A SWAT officer, helmet on, eyes locked, had entered through the breach point he made earlier, followed by a flood of boots, shields, and radios. Someone screamed. Another person sobbed. And the girl? She stood, walked slowly toward him, wrapped her arms around his waist, not saying a word. And he finally let out the breath he'd been holding since the vent. They led him out through the freight elevator, away from the cameras, away from the questions. He didn't resist, just nodded politely as if he were leaving a set, not a war zone. His coat was torn. Blood on the sleeve, not his. A bruise darkening near his temple. He walked like it didn't hurt, like nothing could touch him now. But inside, something shifted. The hallway in the underground level had been cleared for quiet debrief. That's what they called it. A white room, metal chairs, 2 officers in plain clothes, and a bottle of water untouched on the table. They asked who he was. He didn't answer. They asked how he got into the vent system. He looked at the empty chair across from him. Then came a different question. How did you know there were 4? He paused. That was the moment the tone changed. The officer stared, waiting. He finally spoke, voice low, steady. I didn't. A long silence followed. You moved like someone trained, one said. Military? No. Private security? No. Then how the hell did you predict a 4th attacker, a decoy, and an explosive setup that even our scans missed? He looked at them, and for the first time, something flickered behind his calm. I didn't predict, I listened. To what? He glanced toward the door, then leaned forward. To fear. They didn't understand, but they wrote it down anyway. Then came a knock. A man in a gray suit entered, no badge, no smile. He whispered something to the younger officer, handed him a folder. The officer opened it, skimmed the contents, then looked up with a new expression. He turned the folder toward Keanu. Inside was a surveillance photo, grainy black and white, dated 10 years ago. The man with the detonator was already wanted. Not just for robbery, not just for weapons trafficking, but for targeted disappearances. TIA red list. Presumed dead. Until today. And next to him in the photo was Marcus, the man Keanu came to visit. Music fades to an icy hum. Clock ticking slow and sharp in the background. He said nothing, just closed the folder gently. They asked, "Did your friend know?" Keanu stood. "I think he did. I think he was trying to warn me. That's why he asked me to come." "Where is he now?" "I don't know." He walked to the door. They didn't stop him. Just before stepping out, he turned his head slightly. "You should stop asking how I knew." A pause. "And start asking why he didn't run." Then he was gone. Fade to ambient city noise, but quieter, less triumphant, more uncertain. The city resumed its rhythm by dusk. Sirens faded and news anchors scrambled to fill airtime with dramatic headlines and blurred footage. Unidentified hero thwarts hostage crisis. Insider plot suspected in tower takeover. But none of them had his name, and none of them knew where he had gone. Keanu stood at the edge of a rooftop several blocks away, the breeze tugging at his coat, the lights of Monarch Plaza flickering behind him like the afterimage of a dream. In his hand was a single item, a flash drive, old, dented, unlabeled. He had found it in Marcus's office, hidden behind a loose panel in the vent shaft, wrapped in cloth, almost like a gift, or a warning. On it, one file. No title, just a timestamp. He plugged it into a secure laptop at a late-night internet cafe no one cared to question him about. The video began with static. Then, Marcus's voice. No face, just the sound. Rashed, breathing heavy. "If you're seeing this, it means I didn't make it out, and that you came anyway." A long pause. "I didn't bring you here to catch up. I brought you here because you're the only person I trust who doesn't owe anyone anything." Another pause. "There's a group operating beneath the corporate floor of Monarch. You never see them on paper, but they're there, embedded inside tech firms, governments, even rescue ops. They're not after money, they're after data. Biological, behavioral, psychological." Keanu's jaw tightened. "They created the hostage event, not for ransom, but for observation, to see how people respond, how far they'd go, who breaks, who doesn't. And you were the variable." More static, a faint cough. "I told them you wouldn't come, that you were done with this world, but I hoped I was wrong." Then, silence. The screen went black. He sat there, unmoving. The cafe buzzed around him. Cheap coffee machines, flickering monitors, the hum of other people's lives continuing like nothing had changed. He stood up, pocketed the drive, and walked out without a word. He didn't go home. Didn't call anyone. He went back to the rooftop and stared at the building that started it all. Down below, a man stepped out of a dark SUV. No badge, no expression, just a tablet in hand and a voice on a Bluetooth headset. "Yes," the man said. "He saw the footage." Pause. "No, he didn't destroy the drive." Pause. "He's doing what we expected." Another pause, then, "No, he doesn't realize yet this wasn't the experiment." A beat. "He was?" Music rises, slow, pulsing, steady like a countdown just starting. He didn't sleep. Didn't speak. Just moved. Through alleys, past crowds, unseen even in plain sight. His steps led him far from the city center, to a location burned into his memory. An address buried in a corner of the flash drive, hidden within metadata no civilian should know how to read. It led to an old train station, long decommissioned, no passengers, no lights, just dust and the faint sound of water dripping through rusted steel. At the far end of the platform was a door. No label, no lock. But when he placed his palm against the surface, it opened. Inside, silence. In a room. Large, circular, sterile. No windows, no markings, just 12 black chairs arranged in a circle, and only one was occupied. A woman, mid-40s, gray streak in her tied-back hair, sat calmly with a tablet in her hand. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look up. "We knew you'd come," she said without turning. He didn't answer, just stepped forward, eyes scanning everything. She set the tablet down. "You weren't the target, Keanu. You were the key. The proof that in a crisis, instinct still trumps programming." She finally met his gaze. "We fed them variables, threats, chaos. We watched who folded, who begged, who resisted. But you didn't react like the others. You moved." He remained still. "We needed to see what happens when someone with no directive, no master, no debt chooses to intervene anyway. You were never meant to stop the attack. You were meant to reveal yourself." Her voice softened. "And now you've done that." He looked at the empty chairs. "Who are you?" Her smile was tired. "We're not villains, Keanu. We're not heroes either. We're the ones watching what happens when the world forgets how to care. You reminded us what it looks like when someone does." A pause. "Now the question is, do you want to walk away?" He looked down, thought of the girl with the stuffed bear, of the silent promise he made, of Marcus and what it cost him. He raised his head. "No." Her expression didn't change. "You walk through that door," she said, pointing to a wall that hadn't been there a moment ago. "You don't come back. You disappear. From press, from screens, from stories. You become part of something no one can ever applaud." Another silence. He walked, not toward the exit, but toward the chair across from her. Sat down, folded his hands, and waited. Outside, the world moved on. Headlines faded. Photos blurred. The name Keanu Reeves drifted into quiet. But beneath it all, in a room no one spoke of, the man who once saved a child now faced the quiet storm that made her a target in the first place. Music fades out, piano over low, persistent pulse, the kind that never ends, only deepens. There was no announcement, no breaking news, no final bow. He simply vanished. No interviews, no press tour, not even a whispered rumor on the usual back channels. His phone was disconnected, his home untouched, his accounts left dormant. The world thought he had stepped away again like he had done before, taking time to heal, reflect, disappear. But those who had seen him that day, those few who had felt his presence in that boardroom, the ones who had heard the calm in his voice while staring down a gun barrel, they remembered. Especially the girl. She never learned his name, not officially. No badge, no uniform, just a man in a long coat who looked at her like she mattered, who kept a promise he never had to make. Her mother told her to forget it, that it was over, that they were safe now. But she didn't forget. Years passed. And one day, on her 12th birthday, she left a card on a bench at that same train station where it all began. No return address, just a simple note inside. It read, "You didn't let go, so I won't either. Thank you." She left a small blue bear next to it. Its ear was still torn. The rain came softly after. Elsewhere, in a facility never listed on any map, behind walls thicker than politics and deeper than war, a new name had been added to a ledger. No rank, no title, just a code name. 42. It didn't stand for the floor. It stood for the moment. The moment when one man, who owed the world nothing, chose to become everything it had forgotten. There's a myth whispered in back alleys and between operatives. They say if you're ever truly cornered, when there's no one left, no hope, and no sound except the ticking of time, you might look up and find a man who doesn't ask questions, doesn't leave names, doesn't need saving, because he already is the answer. Final music cue, soft orchestral swell, then a single piano note, silence.